couple here in the United States and their daughter. Our guest is Tanya Sneed. Welcome, Tanya.
Thanks.
Tanya will be telling us about the couple that we're going to show that we interviewed recently. And in fact, that we're in town for a special rally that dealt with Caterpillar Tractor Company, and this was on April 23rd. We're going to see that couple speak, then we're going to see a professionally produced video, and we'll be back to speak with Tanya then at the end of the show. But just to start things off here, Tanya, tell us a little bit about this couple and why they're in Peoria.
Yeah, the couple we're going to be watching, their names are Craig and Cindy Corrie, and they are the parents of Rachel Corrie. She was killed last year in March of 2003 while protecting the home of a Palestinian, and the home was the home was about to be bulldozed, and she was trying to prevent that from happening. And her death has brought about international attention to what is going on in Palestine. There have been over 10,000 homes that have been bulldozed, and over 50,000 people have been made homeless as a result. In many cases, the people are not warned at all that their home is going to be bulldozed, and in some cases, people have even died while inside their home as that is happening.
Okay, and maybe if you'd want to explain a little bit about why this couple was in Peoria in particular, as opposed to someplace else, and what they were here for, and what was happening that day, April 23rd.
Yeah, the bulldozer that was used was a Caterpillar bulldozer, and Caterpillar is selling its D9s to the Israeli military, and used as weapons in war, basically. And the Corries were here as part of a large demonstration and protest against Caterpillar to no longer sell their bulldozers to the Israeli military, to convince them.
Okay, and I think I should mention also that Peace Beat is going to have another program that will detail that entire day with the rally that dealt with the Corries being here, the Palestinian-Israeli situation. People have said there were about 350 people here that day. I know you were here, Tanya. What was your general take on that rally? Do you think it was successful?
Oh, certainly. I think that it did a lot to bring attention again to the issue, and it was remarkable the number of people that we did have that came out to, again to draw attention to what's going on in Palestine and the human rights abuses that are taking place there.
Okay, great. And again, we're going to show, this is going to be Cindy and Craig Corrie, and they're going to be speaking about their daughter, what happened to their daughter in Palestine. And this is going to be about a 20-minute interview. And before we watch that, I'd just like to tell everyone that this is Peace Beat, and of course we're right here on Channel 22, the first and third Friday of each month from 7 to 8 p.m. The program is produced by members of the Peoria Area Peace Network. The Peace Network meets on the third Tuesday of each month at the Lakeview Library Auditorium right here in Peoria at the corner of Lake and University from 7 to 9 p.m. If you're interested, please drop by and attend the meetings, or you can call 693-0627 for more information. Okay, we're going to go to the Corrie interview right now. We'll be back in about 20 minutes. Welcome to Peace Beat. This is Doug Thompson. Tonight we have special guests, Craig and Cindy Corrie. They're here for a demonstration today in Peoria to do with Caterpillar and the death of their daughter. Their daughter died in Israel back in March of 2003. Cindy, could you tell us about that and why Rachel was there in the first place?
Rachel went a little over a year ago, in January of 2003, to Israel, and for a short time to the West Bank. She was trained in the West Bank with the International Solidarity Movement, and then she moved very quickly to Rafah, which is at the southern tip of the Gaza Strip and along the border with Egypt. Rachel had chosen to go with the International Solidarity Movement, which is a Palestinian-led group that includes internationals from all around the world that have gone in support of the Palestinian people. There are only requirements to be in ISM. One must believe in the right to self-determination for the Palestinian people, according to international law, and one must believe in using only nonviolent methods of resistance. And so Rachel had done a lot of research and then was on her way there. She chose to go to Rafah specifically because she felt it was a forsaken place. There are over 1 million people, Palestinians, that live in this very small area, over 140,000 in Rafah. While she was there, was living with Palestinian families, staying in homes that were threatened with demolition because of their location along the border strip. Israel is clearing a swath of land along this border, 300 to 400 meters wide, and they are a giant steel wall. My husband and I have had a chance to visit that area. We went last September, so we were able to see with our own eyes the clearing that's happened. I think sometimes people think that the houses that are being demolished are selectively chosen because somebody in the house has an association with a terrorist or with a suicide bombing, but that's not the case. That's the case in only a very small number of demolitions that take place. And where Rachel was, all of the houses along the border were threatened, and she slept in these houses. She got to know the families. She spoke Arabic. She had studied Arabic a bit, and then practiced it with the children that she was staying with. She slept at wells at night because the wells were threatened with demolition, and in fact 2 had been damaged and really destroyed and were being rebuilt. She worked with the General Union of Palestinian Women, a group that makes handcrafts and supports women in Rafah, and she worked to get or made contact with people in her hometown to try to see if some of these products could be sold in Olympia, Washington. So then one of the things that she did was to resist home demolitions by standing in front of the bulldozers and the equipment that were threatening these homes. Each day the bulldozers were out working in the area, and people could hear them rumbling past their houses during the night. That day, on March 16th, there were 8 international activists, and they stood for several hours in that area as 2 bulldozers worked in the area and 1 APC vehicle. There were 2 Israeli soldiers in each of the bulldozers. They would come up to the activists, stop right at their feet, and then retreat again. And the activists felt that they had actually been successful in preventing demolition that afternoon because at one point the bulldozers retreated back to the edge of the border strip. But then within a short time they returned, and within 5 minutes Rachel was killed. A bulldozer that reportedly had been more aggressive toward the activists earlier in the afternoon had actually pushed one of them into razor wire before bulldozer came toward Rachel. The bulldozer was threatening a house where Rachel had stayed, the house of Dr. Samir, his wife, and his 3 children, small children. And as the bulldozer moved towards the house, Rachel moved into position. She knelt with her arms in the air and started waving and hollering at the bulldozer. But it continued toward, and according to the international eyewitnesses that we have talked with and seen affidavits from, there were 7 eyewitnesses. The bulldozer continued over Rachel. She tried to get to the top of the dirt pile and that was being pushed by the bulldozer. She was actually able to get her head and shoulders above so that she was at eye level with the bulldozer operators. But it continued over her, stopped, and then backed over her once again, and she was killed. She was alive for a few moments, and as her friends went to her and tried to give aid, she said, "My back is broken," and those were her final words. So what we have tried to do is to learn all that we can about this situation ourselves, to see for ourselves, and to try to make country aware of our role as Americans in what's happening there.
Okay. That's a very moving story, and Rachel's a very courageous person, there's no doubt about that. Craig, since that time, you've been very active in the movement to see if this doesn't repeat itself, I guess would be the best way of saying it. What has been happening along those lines since then?
Well, Cindy and I have been asked by a number of people to that would like to hear from us, and when we can, we accept invitations to go talk different places. And so we have been traveling to different places around North America, in U.S. and Canada, and also I guess we've talked in Italy. And trying to talk to people about what's going on, the story that Cindy just gave here, I think, and tell people not only about what happened to Rachel, but what's happening to, of course, the Palestinians every day. I think this week we heard how many homes? 40 homes are destroyed in just the city of Rafah just this week. So that's an incredible destruction of people's ability to live. So we try to tell that story, try to call for not just peace there, but peace with justice for the people that are living there. And of course, you know, to say that this doesn't happen again probably is more talking. What was unusual about Rachel is that she was an international. And that became less unusual immediately when, well, in the West Bank, then Brian Avery, another U.S. citizen, was faced by a tank or an APC, I'm not sure which, when he was standing with his hands raised. He's still alive and actually doing quite well, apparently with an incredible amount of surgery to restore his face. But then Brian Avery was shot in the back of the head just within a couple of miles of where Rachel was killed. He was brain dead then immediately, but finally died this January. And he's from London. And then another person from the UK, also from London, a cameraman was working for HBO trying to film about home demolitions in Rafah, was killed shortly after Tom was shot. That's James Miller. So, so we're a little slow to keep this from happening again. And again, I would point out that Rachel wouldn't want this to be about her. She would want it to be, always be thinking about what's happening to Palestinians, as well as Israelis. They're all trapped in this in this violence, but the overwhelming amount of power is held by the Israelis. They control almost all aspects of the lives, particularly of Palestinians in the Gaza Strip.
Okay. I guess the next question might be, what would someone do that is watching the program that would feel moved to perhaps take action in support of what Rachel was doing and in support of the Palestinians or support of a peace and justice movement? Are there actions that you could recommend along those lines?
Yes, I think one of the things that's most important for people to do is to make a connection with one of the groups that's working on this issue. And there are many of them. I think one of the heartening things for us as we cross the country is to see how diverse the groups are that are working on this issue. There is Jewish Voices for Peace, Jews Against the Occupation, Palestinian solidarity groups, religious groups, church groups that are working on it. And I think it's important to make a connection. If people want to go to the internet, they can locate groups like this. One that I recommend is it's the U.S. Campaign to End the Occupation. The website is www.endtheoccupation.org, and that's a diverse coalition of groups across the United States that are working to end the occupation of the West Bank and Gaza. And they're doing a lot of their work legislatively, so they will send out alerts to people about messages that you can send to your members of Congress. For example, right now they're calling for a GAO study into the use of Caterpillar bulldozer in the occupied territory.
Excuse me. Okay, sorry about that.
they're calling for a GAO study and urging people to write to their congressman and to ask them to call for a GAO study into how Caterpillar bulldozers are being used, because our U.S. weapons export acts say that weapons that we export cannot be used against civilian populations. And clearly in the case of Caterpillar bulldozer, they are being used to destroy civilian homes. So if you connect with this group, you will get a lot of information, and will find links to a lot of other places where you can get information to inform yourself, but also take some action. We're personally calling for support on a piece of legislation, HCR 11, which calls for an independent investigation into Rachel's killing. There was an investigation that was completed by the Israeli military, but it was completely done within the Israeli military. They concluded, they closed the case, they brought no charges, they exonerated the bulldozer drivers, and at first they declined to release any of the report to the U.S. government. The State Department did do some work following that, and since that time my husband and I have been able to read the report. 2 people at the American Embassy were able to read it, and a few people I believe in the State Department have at least been able to see the report. I don't know how much it's been read. Also a couple of senators, but anyway, we're still calling for complete release of that report, but we also feel there needs to be an independent U.S. investigation into Rachel's killing. In Illinois, I know there are 4 congressmen who have signed on to HCR 111. I'm sorry, I don't think I have all their names right in front of me right now, but I know that there are many that have not. So I know Rahm Emanuel has signed on. I believe Jesse Jackson Jr. has signed on. And I'm sorry, I can't remember the other 2 at the moment, but
I believe Representative LaHood has signed also.
yes, he
Yes.
has.
Yeah. So that's
Yeah.
our local representative, of course.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I know there's a 4th person, and I apologize for not knowing right off the top of my head. But anyway, you can go to anybody in the area in Illinois can go to on the web to the Thomas Legislative website and can put in HCR 111 and find out if your representative has signed on to this. And we would just encourage people to do that and to write letters, make phone calls if that hasn't happened.
And what was that other website you mentioned?
It's www.endtheoccupation.org, and it provides excellent information for people that want to learn about the issue and also opportunities to take some action.
Okay, great. Of course, we're here on the day of the rally at the downtown headquarters of Caterpillar Incorporated. And I'm sure a lot of people in the community are wondering, how does this involve Caterpillar? Should we be protesting against Caterpillar, or does this need to be done at a higher level? Could you address that, Craig? What are your feelings about that as far as Caterpillar and their involvement?
Of course, I come at this from a little different background because I was a business executive, although in a financial industry. And so we've written a letter to Caterpillar and just received an answer back that actually I think is in the newspaper today, although I haven't seen the newspaper. So what we would wanted to discuss with the chairman of Caterpillar, while we feel about their responsibility. The Caterpillar Corporation takes, I think, just pride in some of their social responsibility, and they've written that up. For instance, I remember reading in their annual report about their taking pains to make sure that when they sold some Caterpillar equipment in South America, that the use of that equipment would be in keeping with environmental standards, and I think that's admirable. But they also need to be aware of humans and the use of their equipment there. I think that it's unfortunately not the case that we can rely on our government at this point to control the use and advise us about how equipment is used. So if they say they can't control how it is used, or they don't know how it's used, well, they do now know how their bulldozers are used. You know, the bulldozer is now the symbol of the occupation of Palestinian lands. And so I guess if I could talk to them, I'd say they ought to protect their logo and just get those bulldozers out of there. If they can't withdraw the bulldozers that have already been sold, they certainly now know that they don't need to sell more. That, you know, in their letter they said that they didn't think it was right for corporations to be part of a peace process. I don't quite understand that logic, but they should understand that right now they're part of a war process, and they certainly shouldn't be a part of that. I'd call on them to remove themselves from that process, and just hope that they would think like that. You know, as I said, from a financial industry, and there we are required to know your customer and know the use that's being made, so that, for instance, a bank, and I'm not in the banking industry, but a bank is required to know that for somebody that they simply have the checking or savings account for them, that they're not a drug dealer and that that's not drug money. And I don't know how a bank is supposed to do that, but you're supposed to know your customer well enough to know where that money comes from, and is going to, as it just goes through the absolutely legal process of going through a checking account. And I think that that's a pretty tough standard, but it's a legal standard that you're required to adhere to in the United States. And I think a far lower standard would be, if you're selling heavy equipment, to have some idea of where that's going to be used, and certainly after it's been used inappropriately, to stop selling there.
Okay, great. Okay, I know you guys are going to be active probably not only today, but in the future. What do you think, what is the future for this? Do you see things as getting better, or what, could you look into a crystal ball just in a minute or so? And
Yeah. I'm optimistic, partially because of all the people that we've met across the country and across the world who care so deeply about what's happening, and not even just in relation to Palestine and Israel, but other areas. I think feel that it's time for a new paradigm again, that we need to work hard to create the kind of world that we want, and it's not a good time right now, but I think that it's very hopeful to see so many people involved. I know that Mr. Owens wrote a letter to us indicating that he would not meet with us today. I'm disappointed in that, but I think he needs to know, and the people of Caterpillar need to know, that I have seen the destruction in Gaza. I've been in homes, I ate meals in homes that no longer exist. They've been demolished in the last few months. So I've internalized, it's become very personal to me what's happened to this part of my human family. And I would just urge everybody to start thinking about the people around the world who are suffering as part of our human family. And I hope that people at Caterpillar know that since I feel this way, that I will be back. We will be back. This process will continue until some changes and some respect for the human rights of these people are achieved.
okay. And that website again?
www.endtheoccupation.org.
And you could probably find out any information people want to know if they see this program and become interested. That would be a good place to.
I think it's an excellent place to start. Some good information and some tips on how to take action. And it is, as I said, a very diverse coalition.
Okay. Okay, great. Craig and Cindy Corrie, thank you for being with us. Right now we're going to show a video, The Killing Zones, which will tell you a lot about what Craig and Cindy have told us. It elaborates on Rachel's death, how that happened, and what is happening now in Palestine and Israel. So we'll show that, and we'll be back.